Welcome to the 2026 Sociable City Summit featured panel on the mobility continuum from public transit to micromobility. David Doe, representing the International Association of Transportation Regulators, moderated a distinguished panel, including Michael Briggs, Deputy Chief Program Officer, Office of Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell, Sean Carter, General Manager, Mobility Works, and Alex Curtis, Senior Manager of Community and Government Relations, Metropolis Technologies.
My name is David Doe, and I'm proud to again be representing the International Association for Transportation Regulators. If you don't know what IATR is, it is a global association of public officials and transportation regulators focused on safety, equity, affordability, sustainability, and innovation across the transportation system. At its core, IATR is about helping cities and regulators make mobility work better for the people that it serves. I come to this conversation as a former transportation regulator in both Washington, D.C. and New York City. Most recently as commissioner and chair of the Taxi and Limousine Commission. I oversaw the entire for-hire vehicle ecosystem, which is an ecosystem that is 24 hours a day with more than 180,000 licensed drivers. And we do 1 million trips per day. And it's a complex intersection of taxis, for-hire vehicles, liveries, accessibilities, airports, nightlife, and neighborhood quality of life. In that role, I worked with real-world pressures that define the conversation. Late-night demand, curb congestion, major events, worker mobility, accessibility, consumer safety, and how regulation can support innovation without losing accountability. I also helped advance major driver-focused and system-wide initiatives, including defending minimum payrolls, helping drivers deliver billions of pay increase, and expanding the accessible and electric fleet in New York City. That's why I believe that cities do not struggle because they lack transportation options. They struggle when the options do not all work together. This is especially true in places with vibrant day and night activity, whether we are talking about festivals, sporting events, entertainment districts, restaurants, bars, or late night shifts. The challenge is not about getting people from point A to point B. The challenge is building a system that can move large numbers of people safely, affordably, and reliably when demand spikes and curb space is tight. Nightlife mobility is not just about patrons enjoying a night out. It is about workers getting home safely after late shifts. It is about residents navigating busy corridors. It is about people with disabilities having dependable options after dark. And it's about making sure economic vibrancy does not come at the expense of safety, access, or quality of life. From a public sector perspective, the goal is integration. Taxis, transit, TNCs, micromobility, parking, accessible transportation, and curb management cannot operate as separate conversations. They have to function as one. What excites me about today's panel is that it brings together perspectives from planning, technology, accessibility, and operations. Because if cities want seamless movement in high volume, high energy districts, no one sector can solve that alone. The future is not about replacing each other, it's about working together. And so I'm so excited that our first speaker, Michael Briggs, is helping lead Nashville's Choose How You Move initiative and brings deep experience in transportation planning, implementation, and ecosystem coordination. He's well positioned to talk about how city translates big mobility goals into real improvements in transit signals, sidewalks, curb use, and event movement. I would like to introduce Michael to take the stage, or the seat.
All right, thank you, David. So as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Program Officer for Choose How You Move. Right now, I am located in the mayor's office. And the reason that is voters in Nashville passed a really significant referendum back in 2024. And it was putting confidence in and investing in plans that were talked about for a long time here. What you may not see when you're in downtown is that we struggle a lot around infrastructure and being able to get around, particularly as you get outside of downtown and then as you get in and through downtown. And I kind of put downtown at the crux of so much of what we do in the city, because this really is where everything gets complicated, and that's why you have to keep talking amongst the different kind of silos that are within a city. And so we have issues like narrow sidewalks in downtown, being able to manage curbs, and Choose How You Move is kind of going back and investing in a lot of the basics. So what happened in 2024 is a half-cent sales tax surcharge was approved, and that's going to generate over 86 miles of sidewalk throughout the city. It's going to upgrade 600 signalized intersections across town, and this is extremely important within downtown, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And then 24/7 service on our transit system will ramp up over time. And the backbone of that is what we call all access corridors, 54 miles of where we're doing all of these things, making transit work better, be more frequent and reliable, signals being upgraded, sidewalks filled in on these main corridors, and then improving safety. So we often talk about sidewalk, signals, service, and safety. And so all of this is really important when you begin thinking about the downtown worker that needs to get here. And so it's not just the business worker during the day, it's those that are coming in at night that are so essential to the music industry that's here and the hospitality industry as well. And so we'll get into a little bit more about that. But Choose How You Move was a really foundational program, and we're beginning to implement that. And so if you're familiar with bus rapid transit, that is going to be the cornerstone of a lot of the work that we do, and really getting in some of those transit lanes and working through those hard conversations around curbside use, parking will be really integral to this program. Because if we can't do that within downtown, really the whole transit network begins to suffer throughout the city.
And just real quick, dedicated funding is oftentimes really hard to get, and you achieved it. So what were some of the pieces that, that really work together so that you can get to this point where you are, so that we can build more infrastructure for cities like Nashville?
So most Nashvillians do not understand what bus rapid transit is. They may have seen it in other places and have not realized that that's BRT. We had a program in 2018 that was based on light rail that was turned down by voters. And I think what we saw back then was most Nashvillians couldn't envision what a street could look like with light rail. They didn't realize all of the other components that you got by doing that transit project, which is the improved signalization, really a great street that's rebuilt from curb to curb. And so we flipped that narrative in 2024 and began talking about the components of those transit projects. So it's focused on the 4 S's is what we were calling them: sidewalks, signals, service, and safety. And that really helped most Nashvillians to envision what this half-cent sales tax surcharge would go towards.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next speaker is Alex Curtis. Alex brings a technology and policy perspective shaped by work on parking, public policy, frictionless mobility systems, especially the big words that we all use today, which is AI. And so I'm pretty excited to hear from you. He can help us think through how parking operations, curb management, and technology can support safer and more efficient movement for patrons, workers, and venues in high-demand districts. Alex?
Thanks, David. Hi, my name is Alex Curtis. I'm with Metropolis. First, I want to thank you for moderating this panel, Jim, and all the organizers of this conference. It's my first experience, and it's been great so far, so thank you. Also want to thank our night mayor, Benton, and the Department of Nightlife. I especially want to thank you for your leadership in Nashville. It takes a lot to make this city look vibrant and well managed, especially at night. And your department is pulling all that together. So thank you very much for all your efforts. First of all, let me start off with, who has heard of Metropolis? Raise your hand. Perfect. Okay, great. Well, if you haven't heard of us, which doesn't seem like many of you have, that's great. We're a tech company, but we're one of the largest parking companies in the United States. And we're an operator of parking, which means we don't own the lots that we provide parking at. We operate them, we manage them. A lot of times we're just providing technology for those parking lots. And what, like David was saying, what makes us unique is that we're applying AI to a real world experience, hopefully for a seamless experience. We're trying to eliminate fumbling, no tickets, no kiosks, no messing with credit cards. You sign up for an account, you drive in and drive out, that's it. You don't have to deal with tickets or any of the rest of that anymore. But we are a tech company, and so when we say parking, why did we start with parking? Number one, because in a city, it's a frequently used technology or service. It's often a frustration point to many, and it's a big piece of living in a city. And so when we can try to address that and solve that problem with ease to let people move through their life seamlessly, then we've really created something and given time back and let people be less time stuck in the monotony of life and get more engaged in the kinds of things that you're doing in every city. But we're more than just parking. Like I said, we're a technology company. And increasingly, we're trying to become more of a recognition economy or recognition platform, where we're trying to take that expansion of the ease of parking and make that apply through almost every transaction that you have in life, or at least through a city. We're doing a lot of innovation in Nashville, as a lot of companies are, through our programs and just through tech innovation. One of those is the Park and Play program. Some of you may have heard of this program that we have in Nashville, but musicians, you may have heard, are a big component of the heartbeat of Nashville. And we worked with Benton and his team and the city to provide free parking for all musicians. This is a way that, number one, we can support and engage the local tech community, but the local musician community and creative community, but also it's a way to ensure that that lifeblood of the city is supported. And so it's a pilot program for us. We're hopeful to maybe connect with maybe some of you in your cities to expand some of that. Additionally, raise your hand if you've used an autonomous vehicle. Have you heard of autonomous vehicles? Okay. Recently, Waymo just announced that they're starting to provide service here in Nashville. Some of you may have autonomous services built into your own car. Our technology, as those gateless technology, you just drive in, drive out, really anticipated that world. And so we're going to be part of that conversation and part of that equation to let those cars drive in and out seamlessly to park or when they need to charge and things like that. So part of what we do is imagine what the future world looks like and try to build towards that. Additionally, in mobility data and analytics, you were talking a little bit about smart lights and data that goes into getting traffic to flow freely. Well, we have thousands of people parked in our lots, whether it's coming from work and they're parked there all day and then they're leaving at 5 o'clock, or if they're coming in for the next Preds game and then they're leaving at 1 because they had a great time on Broadway. We have a lot of data of who's in those parking lots, just the quantities of people that are parked in those parking lots, and we can share that data with municipalities to help them better plan out the flows of traffic, the flows of traffic lights, and we're eager to work more with more cities to do that. We're currently investigating some conversations with Vanderbilt because of all the great technologies that they're using here in Nashville and how we can kind of supplement their data set to even have better flows of traffic. And then recognition, back to recognition. How many of you, hopefully the answer to this one's a little more than the past few questions, I use one of these to get into work. Anybody use any of these kinds of passes to get into your office or to an elevator or something like that? Well, that's a technology we're working on as well. So at our work, I don't have to use this. I can keep this in the pocket, and I just walk up to my door at work and it unlocks because it knows me as a person. It sounds like not a very easy or not a very needed thing. Like, how hard is it to pull out a pass and swipe it along a wall? But you can't believe how much anxiety relief there is when knowing that the thing didn't swipe, or how many times you have to swipe it again because it didn't read the first time, instead of just walking up to a door and it opens. It just recognizes you. And it's a really neat thing to experience. We're starting to apply more of that technology. But none of this innovation happens without great people. We employ a lot of great people, and none of it happens without being part of an involved community. In Nashville, we employ about 150 people here just downtown, about 700 people in the statewide, and we are part of the community. A lot of us started our careers here, and we're just very engaged, and we think it's really an important piece to recognize that none of great city life happens without community. And so with that, looking forward to maybe working with many of you in your own cities. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Alex. And as we spoke, something occurred to me. Maybe 15 years ago, right, I would have to wait at a toll booth for maybe 30 minutes, and it would be a struggle because there would be friction. I would have to look for coins. I would have to look for cash. All of these things have transformed, and then now your company is on the forefront of innovation for, like, for example, 30,000 people leaving a Predators game, or the Tennessee Titans stadium. So your work is going to help move people more efficiently, and we're very excited by that. So is there anything else you want to add to that, or is that?
You said it better than I could have.
Okay, great. And Sean Carver brings a practical accessibility lens through his work with Mobility Works. He can speak to what cities and operators too often miss. If accessible transportation is unreliable or unavailable, after dark especially, the system is not truly accessible. And so, Sean, if you can talk about what Mobility Works does and how you're improving independence for people with disabilities.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Like David said, my name is Sean Carver. I am the general manager of Mobility Works here in Nashville. And I had about 8 pages of notes here that I was going to read off of that I'm not anymore. And a big part of the reason is because everybody up here has said a little something to each of the topics I was going to actually speak on. I know everybody has, thanked Benton and his organization for this. I want to thank Benton on a personal level. I've known Benton for a long time. I did not buy my way into this seat, I can assure you, because Benton did not always know me as the general manager of Mobility Works. He knew me in a much different light. But Benton and I got a very rare experience when we were downtown one evening after a meeting, and there were about 3 or 4 of us that had accessibility needs. And we went out downtown and we watched, had Benton not been there, to be honest with you, watched 2 people that were visually impaired about got struck by a car, and another one that about came out of a wheelchair coming out of a doorway. True story. That opened up a completely different conversation between Benton and I on what our city looks like as a whole. Michael, you said it best, the 4 S's. The one thing that I would say, we need to add the accessibility side of that. I love this city. I have been here for 31 years. I love downtown. I love going out, hanging out. But it is not disability friendly, not even in the least. And I have a feeling that if I ventured out into a lot of the cities that are represented in this room, it's going to be the same scenario. Because people don't realize that people with disabilities, they want to go out. They want to have a good time. They want to enjoy good food. They want to listen to loud music. They want to get stupid down on Broadway. We need to make sure that that happens for them. And it is a scary thought that they're not able to. And not mentioning the fact of even getting into, these honky tonks. Some of them are old, I get it. The newer ones, they're becoming a lot more accessible, friendly. But then there's the challenges of getting around, getting home. When you watch rideshare drivers that drive by somebody because they have some type of accessibility aid, whether it's a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, a service animal, they have the right to refuse. Doesn't make it right, but they have that right. Does anybody know how many cities there are with a foundational accessible transportation program in place? It's 12. 12 cities in North America that have a formal rideshare program for accessibility. Why is that? Because there was a transportation director of some form that said, okay, you want it, you take it all. It's all or nothing. And why that has not become the norm across the board, I don't know. I hope that one day that will change, because it is scary for our folks with a disability, with some kind of aid, to be able to navigate, get home safely, be able to know that they can go out and they can have a good time. But let's talk about what it's costing these downtown areas. A dollar is a dollar. Well, somebody with a disability is probably not going by themselves. If they can't get into a place, if they can't get to a restroom comfortably, if they can't get whatever assistance they need, all of a sudden that dollar is $10, $20, $30, and it's out the door, and they're going somewhere else. And we're not talking about making alterations to buildings. We're talking about making it a little more comfortable for them. Making sure that these businesses have the training that they need in order to address accessible situations. What that looks like. Does somebody need help? Is somebody in need? What does that look like? We're not asking to change the world with what we do. And by we, I've got to point out, I've got a couple people in my staff here, and I don't think they've ever heard me go on this much of a tangent before, so I apologize. But this is my passion, and this is what I would like to see changed, not only in Nashville, but in other cities across the board. If we can't start doing this together, it's not going to happen. All right, I'm off my soapbox, David. Go ahead.
Well, what you say, Sean, is incredibly, poignant. It's true, right? And in New York, we're very proud to be one of the most accessible cities in the country. When I was commissioner of the TLC, we celebrated 50% of active taxis, a little over almost 6,000 yellow taxis being accessible. But the work doesn't just stop at accessibility or the number of vehicles, right? It's the training of drivers, right? It's the education that you don't have the right to refuse in New York City, right? That you do not have the right to refuse because people have a service animal or that they are in an electric wheelchair. You can't do that. And so, the work doesn't stop there. But when we reached the 50% mark last June, a person with a disability told me she now has the freedom to go on a hot date, right? And that was just, it is funny, but it's true, is that people with disabilities want the same independence that we all have. And so, places like Mobility Works, like the yellow taxi industry, or even Uber and Lyft, where they are required to have equitable service in New York City, moves that in a more equitable way to get us where we need to go. And I'm going on a tangent now too. However, I'll end with this, is that a bigger vehicle is good for everybody. A roomier vehicle can hold more luggage, can get more comfortable for your kids. And so universal design is incredibly important. So thank you for that. Okay, now back to our regular programming. So I have a couple of questions to pose to the panel, and I guess I want to start with Sean. What does it actually take to turn a collection of modes, transit taxis, TNCs, parking, micromobility, and accessible transportation, into one connected system that works in real time for patrons, workers, and residents? And what is Mobility Works? What are you doing to make that a reality?
It takes us all. It takes myself, it takes Michael, it takes Benton, it takes Alex, it takes, all of us collectively coming together to figure out where are the problems, but better yet, what are the solutions? What do we have to do to come together and make that a possibility? It's not about pointing out the problems. It's about finding the solutions. Transportation's come a long, long ways. I don't know how long it'll be before it gets to where we would like to see it. My role is exactly what I am doing right now, to get on my soapbox, to embarrass my staff, to get out in the community and let people know, hey, I'm the voice. That's me. I'm the good-looking voice down here, but that's me. That's what I'm doing, is just making aware of what we've got going.
Alex?
It's obviously a hard problem, and I think collaboration really is the key, right? None of each of us solves that problem singularly, but working together we can. So I think it's definitely something we all need to be focused on.
And so with that, what is your biggest wish from the private sector in terms of data or other things that you would need to build a better system, both of you? And then I'll go to the public sector.
Knowledge, just knowledge, getting it out there.
Okay.
Letting people see.
Okay.
I think your point is right. Like we do have to have those data points, right? If we don't know if you don't know how much you weigh, you can't get on a leaner track, right? And so how do we identify which facilities have the needed facilities, right? Identifying that is probably the first step.
Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, I think on the public sector side, I think, when you just think about the Choose How You Move program, we're really trying to kind of flip the narrative, because there's an assumption amongst most Nashvillians that you just hop in your car. And do you really have an option when you are required to hop in a car, go pay for parking, and get where you need to go? And so I think that was a good talking point back in 2024 around this, is that we're really trying to enhance all of these things to work better together. Because right now, a lot of people don't feel like they have an option here in Nashville. And then I think, in order to make those options work better for everyone, is that we kind of have a mindset here of you count traffic, you monitor traffic, but we've not done it so much with pedestrians until we've done some studies on Lower Broadway. And, the amount of pedestrians that are down there rival, some international cities. And so that shows right there that even in a car-centric culture in the South, a really vibrant place is where you're able to walk around and get where you need to go. And by counting that, we were able to say that. And so I think just beginning to use kind of data points on the public side, some of the new technology that's coming in, that's using folks' phones, and it's anonymized data, but it's giving you much richer information to make better decisions around how people are moving within some of these really complicated areas. Because the default here in Nashville is for most people to look at a traffic engineer and ask them, fix this for us. And you can't fix that problem when you've got congested streets at certain times of the day. And so having those other tools to really paint a story and tell a story around data is really essential for those other modes to make Choose How You Move successful.
At the TLC, we have billions of points of data every single day. from driver pay data to passenger data. We have too much data, right? And you know, one of the hardest things, well, this is the TLC, but one of the hardest things is like digging through that data and telling a story. And you know, within the public sector, we don't have all the resources to pay for all the things, right? But the private sector, and sometimes in partnership with the public sector, can look at that data, can use that data differently. From trip data to trends to other things, like for example, during the global pandemic, right? Trips went almost all the way to zero in the for-hire industry. And it grew to 2 million, then 4 million. This is the taxi industry. And then all the way up to over 4.5 million trips in a month in the yellow taxi industry. And so, you know, those are the stories that we want to leverage the data to tell. But it's also accessibility data. When I look at, you know, the data at the TLC, I have a glaring hole in it. I don't know when a driver is taking a passenger who uses a wheelchair or a disability. All this complicates things. And so, you know, I guess for the panel, what data do we need to collect so that you can do your jobs better in municipal government and state government? And then what data can you share, will you share, or even that you may need from the private sector? So I'll throw it to you all.
So the issue that we have in Nashville is that oftentimes it's very convoluted, very muddy, because we are a very tourist-rich city. So in order to track that data, you know, obviously I think Michael and his office can track what is happening within the city, but it's coming from outside of the city, outside of the county, because unfortunately, and I'm hoping that one day that we will expand that out with a further reach, but you know, right now it's limited to the main metropolitan Davidson County. They don't have the ability to cross county lines. So it's figuring out how to track the people that are coming in from outside of our county, Davidson County, to enjoy, you know, the downtown area.
Yeah, I think on our end, a lot of it comes down to capacity to do this. It's the data's there, but getting a person, and now maybe even AI, but someone's got to prompt the AI to be able to like go and look for this stuff, and making it part of someone's job is really hard to do when they're already tasked with a lot that they are managing and doing. And I think really the data's there in places if you know where to look. It's having the capacity to be able to do that here and be able to tell a story, analyze it. Like I go back, and this hits on parking, and it's with my other hat when I was at Vanderbilt. We had a parking system that was free flow. It used license plate readers that was just for enforcement. But we had very little data about time of day. And we set up a system that had more friction, which we didn't like in the end because it backed things up. And technology actually evolved after we put the gates in. But having those gates in helped us understand how people were using the lot. And like we were actually able to eliminate parking spaces because of that. And it's because we had the data. Whereas the assumption was that parking lots are packed, but that was really just the experience of folks in kind of a short amount of day. And so that actually freed up surface parking spaces to get back to the university's research and academic mission, which was to build academic buildings and teach students. And so that's a good use of where you didn't have data and you were making decisions for many years just based on people's firsthand experience. But having that data, it came in and changed how the university was able to manage their facilities and the capital program there.
I'll throw this next question to Alex. How will technology shape nightlife mobility in the near future, including AI, automated enforcement, AVs, and other emerging tools?
I hope safer, right? I think some folks talked earlier about or saw some of the screenshots of what Vanderbilt's doing, what the city's doing with LiDAR around the city to be able to track pedestrians. That's insane, right? Like, that's movie stuff that we've never really seen before, but they're doing it live, real time, to be able to track, see patterns, where people walk, where people probably walk where they shouldn't be walking, and how to help city officials figure out how to manage that better. I know for us in many cities, and Nashville included, pedestrians walking across the street or walking across the sideway blocks up people in a parking lot or a parking deck. And that's a very minimal, it sounds very, doesn't matter, but like when you get Preds emptying out, tens of thousands of people, many of those people are just going to the bar, many of them going to parking. If they're still pedestrians walking across the street freely, people get stuck for hours in a parking lot trying to get out, even using our no-ticket technology. It's because of pedestrian traffic or just not managing the flow of traffic. How we can use that data in better ways, we're actively talking to the city about that. We're talking to Vanderbilt about that, because it's not, like, Nashville could be the test bed for that, and then we can apply it to other of y'all's cities to make that flow better. But using, AI can help us figure out those trends. I'm very lucky at our office. Our organization's very AI tech forward. We're using it day to day to write emails and, just to do basic things, but it's almost like a hired assistant, and being able to have that additional staff, like you were saying, you arm one person with almost a team of people by leveraging AI, and the amazing things you can do with that, I don't think really have been quite quantified yet.
Are there any other last comments? No?
No, Ben's holding up that 2 minutes.
I know, right? So
I'm like, I'm not saying
so
nothing.
we'll close out at this point. But I just want to thank my fellow panelists for being here to talk a little bit about how the public sector can work with the private sector to not only leverage technology but accessibility to build better infrastructure across Nashville, but across all of our cities. And so, again, I want to thank you all for being part of this. I want to thank the organizers and, of course, Nashville for having us here today. So thank you, everybody.
You can view the complete panel presentation and learn more about the 2027 Sociable City Summit in Philadelphia at sociablecity.org/summit/video.